Alright guys, in today's video we have more PlayStation news to go over and talk about. We do have multiple topics we're covering in this video as usual, so before we get into it, if you could do me a big favor and hit the like button to help the video out and show it your support, I'd really appreciate that. And make sure you hit the subscribe button as well if you are new to the channel. We're starting here though with what a developer had to say about the PlayStation 5 and how, according to this developer, they suspect that the PlayStation 5's SSD will be the biggest overall game changer in the next few years. And I find this interesting because this is kind of what we've been hearing about the PlayStation 5 for a while now. Now, I know not everybody wants to hear it's going to happen in a few years because obviously that's a little bit of a wait, but that's just how it is with every next generation console. It takes some time for developers to fully harness its capability, and we're also going to see engines kind of developed around these new pieces of hardware. So let's go over what's being said here. Keith Lee, the CEO of Godfall developer Counterplay Games, has said that he expects the PS5's SSD to be the biggest overall game changer, allowing for more than just faster loading times as game makers squeeze more out of the hardware. This is what he had to say when speaking in the latest issue of official PlayStation Magazine UK. He says, over the next few years, I'd expect the SSD may be the biggest overall game changer as we move from generic engine code designed to run on PC or PC to hand-tuned streaming pipeline developed specifically for the PS5. We should see amazing leaps in both content details as well as the speed with which this content loads. This won't just mean denser open worlds that load faster, but super detailed small environments. And so I really like what Keith is saying here because he's once again highlighting something very important about development for the PS5, and this is also applicable to the Xbox Series X as well. But we do have to understand that Sony doubled down on the SSD, they doubled down on the I/O throughput, and making sure that they would be able to stream high quality assets seamlessly, right? This is something that will ultimately allow for a shift in game design. And as he says here, as we move from generic engine code that's designed to run on PC, we should start to see some big leaps forward. I've been trying to explain this. This is what Mark Cerny tried to explain with the road to PS5. And I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but it's just anytime we hear a developer talking about this, I do feel as though it is worth pointing out and highlighting. Granted, I don't think anybody is looking at Godfall as a amazing game. I mean, it's a pretty mixed game, but still, this is a developer who has worked with the hardware and is still working with the hardware. And it's worth noting that this is what we have heard from multiple developers. And so as we go further into this generation, there's no doubt we're going to see Sony's first-party studios do some amazing things, but it will be interesting to see if there actually is a paradigm shift like some of us are maybe expecting or anticipating. That paradigm shift being, is this really the future of game development? The way that the PlayStation 5 is designed, its main focus being on speed rather than just raw power and having that, wide, GPU with a lot of compute units. We're going to see in the long run if that's what ends up happening. But we have one developer here on top of a few that we've already heard saying that he believes the SSD specifically and the I/O throughput is going to be the biggest game changer in the long run. So let's see what happens, guys. We're going to move on from that though and talk a little bit about how the PlayStation 5 is doing in Japan. I do think this is important to highlight because Japan is Sony's home territory, obviously, and it seems that they've been putting less of an emphasis on it. But we do have a little bit of good news here, as it seems that the PS5 is doing relatively well in Japan, and because of that, we could see Sony maybe not back away as much as maybe some of us are thinking they're going to. So it says here there was concern at its launch that the PS5 may outright flop in Japan, although with availability so low, this line of speculation always flirted with fantasy. It's worth reporting then that the console is doing much better domestically now, even though it's still extremely difficult to find. According to Famitsu sales data, the system has now sold 517,916 units in its home territory. Crucially, the weekly numbers have been consistent of late. Between March 8th and 14th, the next-gen system moved about 38,000 units, that's rounding up slightly, And between March 15th and 21st, it managed a further 34,500 units. This is much steadier performance overall. And while it's still getting obliterated by the Nintendo Switch, it's important to reiterate that stock remains restricted. Social media had a lot of fun pointing out late last year that the PS5 was selling worse than the Nintendo Wii U in Japan, and while it's still tracking behind the failed format, it's now quickly beginning to catch up with launch, with them launching more consoles in the region. So the biggest concern at the moment is that PlayStation software is practically non-existent in the region, although Sony will no doubt be looking at Resident Evil Village to see how that performs. So again, I just wanted to take a moment to highlight this and make everybody aware that the PS5 is starting to gain some more momentum in its home territory. And I do think that is very important to pay attention to, because for those of you who are concerned about Sony moving away from Japan and Japanese game development, this is no doubt going to play a crucial role in that. We saw what happened with Japan Studio, unfortunately, but I think that the better this console does in Japan, the more support Sony is going to show its home territory, which I do think is important. So we'll have to kind of keep an eye on this and see if it kind of hits a wall, or as more PS5s become available, if it's going to increase. This is also a good sign that Sony is able to continually produce PS5s and at least get some out there in different regions and territories. If they weren't, then they wouldn't be selling. It's as simple as that. So there you go. We're going to move on from that, though, and talk about something that honestly is not good news, but we do have to acknowledge this because, frankly, I am not sure what Sony is doing here. I think, frankly, what they're doing is very disrespectful to developers, and I honestly am just kind of shocked that they would go about it this way. But I came across an article, and it says not all PlayStation Vita developers were told of the store closure. Several games are now canceled. Now, don't get me wrong, before I get into this, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm some kind of big fan of the PlayStation Vita, because we all know that I don't play the PlayStation Vita. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I would have been buying these games, but still, it's a principle thing here where I'm not sure why Sony would handle it this way. But it says Sony finally confirmed the closure of the PS3, PSP, and Vita stores yesterday. Of the three, the Vita store is staying open the longest, closing on August 27th. While Sony told some developers of the closure, not all of them got the memo that was sent out. The result is several games have now been canceled for the handheld, while others are being frantically rushed to the finish line to make them available before the store is closed forever. So it goes on to say here that the store closure deadline has come too soon for some developers, especially as they weren't told about the closure before the news released publicly. Lilymo Games, developer of Twin Breaker, Hebroxia, and Perils of Baking, told players they were finding out the same time that we are. As a result, Lilymo's next game has been canceled on Vita because the store will be closed before our next game is ready. And so apparently Hebroxia 2 will be their final Vita release. And so, this is just one of a few developers who are coming out and saying that apparently they were learning the same day. And again, I have to really question what's going on here. It just really seems like Sony is handling this in the worst possible way that they could. Not only is it coming abruptly, but even developers are being caught off guard. And I just feel like look, you're Sony, right? You're a billion-dollar corporation. I don't see any reason why it would be a problem for you to maybe extend the deadline. And I've seen a lot of people requesting that maybe Sony do some kind of big mega sale, kind of like last chance sale to buy all these games. I think that would be an amazing thing, not only for developers just to, get some extra sales maybe, but, just to give people an opportunity to really kind of buy up everything that they want to buy up. And there's so little time here. It's just crazy to me that there are developers who were making games for the Vita and they now have to cancel those games. I mean, it's unfortunate. It is what it is at the end of the day. This is just the way it's going down. But I can't sit here and say that I condone Sony handling it this way. They could have done a much better job. I think that, this is just not projecting a very good image for Sony. With everything that's been going on lately, this is just something where it's like, it's not going to affect everybody. There's a lot of people who frankly don't care, but in general, this could have been handled much better in my opinion. And it's just quite unfortunate to see that this is what has had to happen, right? So Sony remains, you know, kind of hush hush on the whole thing. So yeah, we'll have to see if they say anything else. But I'm going to end this video by talking briefly about Resident Evil Village and how it will utilize PS5 activities feature for the main story progress, which I think is cool. So it says, speaking during the latest issue of official PlayStation Magazine UK, Capcom's Morimasa Sato confirmed that Resident Evil Village will utilize the PS5 activities feature to some extent. When quizzed if the game would use PS5 activities, Sato-san confirmed it will indeed utilize the feature for the main campaign and more. And so this is something pretty small, but I think it's actually good because this is a feature that we want to see more developers utilize. It's something that, frankly, I think does actually serve a pretty useful purpose when you're playing single player games, especially. I mean, I remember when using it in Spider-Man Miles Morales, I would just, you know, look at the activities, notice there's an activity that I haven't done yet, click on it, and then boom, I'm right there ready to do it. It's very simple, very streamlined, very easy. So the more developers we see take advantage of it, the better, in my opinion, because it is something that I really do think benefits single player games, or if you're playing a campaign, right? So it's nice to see that Resident Evil, a big AAA game, is going to be utilizing it to some extent. I hope they do it well, and I will be interested to see if other developers and other games that are coming out in the future will utilize it on top of that. But that's going to do it for the video, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. I hope you did find it informative. If you did, leave it a like. Make sure you leave your thoughts down in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Hit the bell notification icon, and feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.